So this happened when I was living alone in a small, single-floor rental house in a quiet area just outside town. Nothing remote or sketchy, just a normal street, neighbors on both sides, and streetlights. The kind of place where you don't expect anything strange to happen. I'd been there for a while already, long enough to know the house sounds and routines, long enough to feel comfortable being alone at night. It was a normal weekday night. I remember it was late, but not that late, maybe around 10:30 or 11. I was sitting on the couch in the living room with the TV on low, not really watching anything, just using it as background noise while scrolling on my phone. Most of the lights were off like usual. The house was quiet in a normal way, pipes ticking occasionally, the AC cycling, and that soft hum you stop noticing after a while. The first thing I noticed was a sound from the back of the house. It wasn't loud and it didn't happen suddenly. It sounded like pressure against the back door, the way it sounds when someone leans on it or when the wind pushes just enough to make the door flex in the frame. The thing is, that night the air was completely still. I remember that clearly because it had been hot all day and there wasn't even a breeze. At first I didn't react. I just paused what I was scrolling and listened. The sound didn't repeat right away. Everything went quiet again. I told myself it was the house settling, or maybe I imagined it, because that happens sometimes when you're half distracted. A few minutes later it happened again, same sound. Soft, controlled, like something testing the door. That's when I muted the TV. Once the background noise was gone, the house felt bigger and emptier. I sat there listening, trying to convince myself it wasn't anything. After another minute or so, I got up and checked the back door. Deadbolt was locked and the chain was still on. Nothing looked disturbed. I even opened it and stepped outside for a second. The backyard was empty. Fence gate closed. Neighbor's porch light was on. No movement, no sound. When I went back inside, I locked the door again and stood there longer than I needed to. I remember thinking about how quiet it was, how the silence didn't feel normal anymore. But nothing happened, so I went back to the couch. I turned the TV back on, but kept the volume low. I wanted to hear the house. I wasn't scared yet, just alert. That's when I heard something upstairs. It wasn't a clear footstep. It sounded like someone starting to step and then stopping halfway through. A soft shift of weight, the kind of sound you only notice when you're already listening too hard. I froze and just stood there, staring at the dark hallway that led to the stairs. I lived alone. I don't have pets. No one should have been there with me. I waited, barely breathing, expecting to hear another sound. Nothing came. After a while, I told myself it had to be the house. Old floors creak and wood moves sometimes. I'd heard similar sounds before, just never that clearly. I walked to the bottom of the stairs and looked up. The upstairs hallway was dark. I couldn't see past the top step. I called out a quiet hello, not loud enough to sound confident, more like I was testing the space, but no response. I went upstairs slowly, turning on lights as I went. Hallway, bathroom, bedroom, everything. I checked everything without rushing. Doors were exactly how I'd left them. Windows locked, closet untouched. Nothing felt out of place. The calmness of it all made me uneasy. It felt too normal. I went back downstairs and sat on the couch again, but I couldn't relax. I kept pausing the TV to listen. Every sound felt sharper now. Every little noise felt like it meant something. About 15 minutes later, I heard movement from the kitchen. Not a clatter or anything obvious. Just a soft sound, like fabric brushing against a counter or someone shifting their stance. Slow, careful. I muted the TV again and sat completely still. The sound happened again, slightly closer this time. I could tell it wasn't the house. It wasn't random. It had rhythm to it. I stood up and walked toward to the kitchen without turning on any lights. The glow from the TV barely reached the doorway. I stopped just short of entering and listened. I turned the kitchen light on, but the kitchen was empty. Counters clear, chairs pushed in, sink empty, back door still locked. I checked it again, just to be sure, but everything was secure. I stood there longer than made sense, waiting for something to change. When nothing did, I felt embarrassed, like I'd scared myself for no reason. I turned the light off and went back to the couch. That's when I heard the basement door. The basement door was right off the kitchen, and it had a very specific sound. It never opened quietly. When it moved, it scraped slightly, and then made a dull thud against the frame. I heard that exact sound. I didn't move. I didn't even look toward it right away. I just sat there, heart beating faster than it should have, staring at the dark hallway. Then I heard the first step on the basement stairs, a slow creak, then another. Whoever was coming up wasn't rushing. They weren't trying to be quiet either. It sounded casual, like they weren't worried about being heard. That's when I stood up and backed toward the front door without taking my eyes off the hallway. I didn't shout. I didn't call the police. I didn't even think to grab anything to defend myself. My body just reacted. Another step creaked, then it stopped. The silence that followed felt heavier than anything before it. I stood there waiting for someone to appear, for a shadow to move, for anything. Nothing happened. After what felt like a long time, I slowly walked toward the kitchen. I don't know why. I think I just needed to see it. I reached the basement door and looked down the stairs. The door was open all the way. The basement light was off. I was sure I'd closed that door earlier. I always did. Leaving it open made the house feel wrong. I listened, but no movement or sound. I closed the door and pushed until it latched. Then I leaned against it for a second, breathing slowly and trying to calm down. I told myself maybe I'd left it open. Maybe air pressure did something. Maybe I was imagining patterns where there weren't any. I locked the front door and went upstairs. I turned on every light along the way. I locked my bedroom door and sat on the bed with my phone in my hand. I texted a friend, just asking if they were up, but they didn't reply. I stayed awake for a long time. Nothing else happened. Eventually, I fell asleep without realizing it. In the morning, everything looked normal. Bedroom door still locked, sunlight coming through the windows, and the house felt ordinary again. Until I went downstairs. The basement door was open, wide open. I stood there staring at it, that same cold feeling settling back in. I checked every door. Front door locked, back door locked, windows untouched, nothing missing, nothing disturbed. I moved out as soon as my lease ended. I never got an explanation. I still think about how slow those footsteps were on the stairs, and how whoever it was didn't seem surprised that I was home. What bothers me the most is that if someone was in my house that night, they didn't panic, they didn't run, they just stopped, waited and left without me ever knowing how.